everybody. Welcome to the 178th meeting of the ECCL, Estero Council Community League. Good to have you all here. We're going to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mark will lead us once again.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, once again, we start out by welcoming new guests and those people who want to be introduced. So, starting over here on the other side of the room, there's some of you that are new and like to identify yourselves. Yes, okay.
I'm Mike Bordino, just a seasonal owner at the Breckenridge, and got your flyer, thought I'd stop by and find out a little bit about the community.
Good to have you, Mike. Appreciate it. Like to have you here. Anybody else going along the what is it, northern border? Down here at the end. Raise your hand if you recognize. Yes, sir. Oh, no. I think we know you, Barry. Vicki, why don't you introduce your...
I will. I'm Vicki Olson. I'm the representative from the colony at Pelican Landing, and for the first time ever, I have an alternate. I'm so excited. And I'm thrilled to have him here, and I think that this is going to be here. We'll see how many other ones.
Well,
Probably will be on time.
Yeah. You won't get introduced there. Both Vicki and Jim are from the colony in Pelican Landing and represent that community on the ECCL. Right? Good to have you here. That's great. Anybody else new and unapproved? All right, moving right along. I see the chief back there, and so we'll start with Scott Vanderbrook and the fire district report.
We'll start with San Carlos, ladies first.
All right, ladies first.
Announcement, gentlemen.
All right.
Saw that one coming.
Alexis Rothring. Alexis.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. The chief apologized for not being able to make it this morning, but get my smiling face instead. Hope that's good enough. So I just have a few things. Last year we ran a total of 3,967 calls, and that was a 6.61 increase from 2017. So just with steady building that our fire prevention division is seeing, both residentially and commercially in our area, San Carlos has a good bit to grow, especially out east. We're seeing a real rise in our call volume. We are in brush fire season. If you haven't already, make sure to make your home fire-wise. That means a 30-foot defensible space from your home to any type of vegetation. So cleaning out the gutters, getting those needles and stuff off the roof, and making sure there isn't any ground cover that may allow fire to travel up to your home. It gives us a nice space to be able to fight a fire in between brush and your home. So 30 feet there. Cold days like today have especially high fire danger. So the cold weather is never a good thing for fire, but probably a great thing everybody's enjoying today. We had 146 needy children receive gifts as part of our Secret Santa program. So if you or anybody in your community donated to that, thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. We also had 91 children participate in our Santa mailbox program. We have Santa mailboxes at all of our fire stations, and Santa writes back. So 91 children got letters personalized from Santa this year. The very last thing I'd like to offer is for me to come out to your community and conduct what we call Step Wisely. Step Wisely is a program that addresses falls prevention. So falls are a huge problem here in Lee County. Our death rate from falls is more than double the state average. So it costs an average of $61,000 for a fall. That's a 4-day stay in the hospital. $61,000 is what we see at Lee Health from 4 days spent in the hospital from a fall. Good news. Falls don't have to be a part of your life. All right, they're completely preventable. We just have some home improvement lifestyle changes that we can make. It's really, really simple. I could come out for anywhere from a 30-minute to over an hour program and go through the Stepwise Lee program. And Susan can also conduct that if you're in the Estero Fire District. So it's through a program through Lee Health, and every fire district in the county participates. So we would love to come out and present that to the community, and then we can, if you want to get even further into it, we can have the representative from the trauma center come out to your community the following week, and they can actually do balance testing on you with some machinery that they have, some equipment that's really, really cool. So first step to getting the really cool equipment to your community is listening to me talk for a half an hour to 1 hour. All right. That's all that I have for you guys. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them, or if you want to listen to Chief first, and then any questions we got at the end we can both address.
Any questions for Alexis? Okay. Chief?
Good morning. Last month you asked me about some call data. I think Bob did, and so I went ahead and ran our, like she had talked about, our year-end call volume. We ran over 5,100 calls last year, and I did a 10-year comparison from 2008 to 2018, and we were up 55% over a 10-year period. Just like San Carlos, we're seeing a large amount of growth down east and a large amount of growth in the village. So those call volumes will continue to go up, and we are working on, as I talked about before, our 20-year plan. We just hired a company at our last board meeting to do a community risk assessment. They will take an in-depth look at the entire fire district of Estero, which incorporates the village, unincorporated, and parts of Bonita Springs. And they will advise us on where fire stations should be, where our high risks are. They're also going to look at a 10-year projection on growth ad valorem and impact fees, kind of help us out for budgeting as we move forward, and take a real hard look at what the fire department's doing to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the community. That report will take about 8 months. They come down here, they spend time with us. There may even be a community group that'll be involved, and we're working with the village also. So that'll help us as we move forward and as we build and grow. We did close Wednesday on 4.6 acres of property behind our administrative building that we've been trying to purchase for 2 years. There's no immediate plans for that. We just wanted to secure the property for growth. We are also working with the county on our 5 acres out east for an additional station as the 3 new subdivisions start to get built out east. She talked about brush season. That's it. Any questions? Yes?
Scott, could you talk to the group about regulations concerning speed bumps and what you as emergency personnel have for?
Got about a half a day? No. It's been our stance, and it always will be our stance, no traffic calming devices, period. Okay? It slows down our responses tremendously. Okay? We have a national average by the NFPA that says that we're supposed to respond and have our first unit on scene of a structure fire in roughly 5 minutes. Take away a structure fire, cardiac arrest. You know what happens if somebody's not breathing for 4 or 5 minutes, okay? Our response times are important to us. In some of these communities that have used hard speed bumps, each speed bump slows us down 30 to 45 seconds because we can't drive across them like a car and just go ba-boom, ba-boom. We have to stop every axle because the truck is so large. So we've been fighting some of them. We've worked with some communities. We've had some communities tell us flat out, we're going to put them in, we don't care. So what we've done is with those communities is we've tried to work with them on certain types of calming devices that will still allow emergency vehicles. They're more of a rubber, and they have cuts in them, not wide enough for vehicles, but wide enough for fire trucks. But we are totally against calming devices. But I know some communities, they just absolutely want to have them. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the village report by Vice Mayor Bill Ribble. Bill?
Okay, I plan to keep the tempo going, it's already been said, so Don, I won't be using up all my 15 minutes. But I did want to start out with a little cheerleader this morning. How about that new governor asking all the water directors to resign voluntarily? This is going to be absolutely huge for our community here. All of Southwest Florida is going to be great with this. As you know, as you probably saw, he was in town yesterday and pledged a couple of $1 billion for us to get this red tide thing turned around, which is really going to be a challenge. The caveat to that is, and it's not a popular one, is that we've got to go after locally a lot of these septic tanks that are in yards that we know are failing. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. A lot of these properties that feed into that Estero River, the river's been tested, we have pollution, so at some point in time we got to step up, and the council's got to be a little bit more responsible for making something like that happen, coming up with a good strategic plan. I did want to initially start out, when I wrote this outline, by giving my colleague Jim Wilson a major kudo. You folks know you videotape this each and every month, and I, believe it or not, if, with a sandwich or whatever, I always watch the whole thing. Usually at one time when I take some notes, because a lot of good things come out of this meeting. But I thought Jim did an absolutely, positively great job capturing all the things that were done in 2018. So for you folks to say, I never know what's going on in Estero, nobody tells me anything. Go online. I think you put this together, Linda, right?
Well.
Somebody typed up the outline. I have a copy of it because when Bill Carr asked me to come over to Riverwoods this February for coffee and talk to the group, I'm going to use that outline. It is absolutely fantastic. So you ladies did a wonderful job with that. Is Alex here? Oh, Alex is here. Alex, I don't want to steal from your thunder, but I do want to say we are getting fantastic feedback from our community on the medical center over there. I understand the folks that have been over there, it's first class when you park, when you check in. Unfortunately, if Scott drops you off, even that whole process is handled smoothly. But I've heard a lot of good things out of that, and I'm not going to say more about that. Have you heard about our conference call yesterday with the state on Pelican Landing or Pelican Colony Boulevard? Okay, we had a great conference call yesterday. Ray Rodriguez helped me put this whole thing together, and I'll fill you in later today on that. If you're wondering why I got a tie on, I'm going to the Hyatt with Gary Israel. Is he here yet? Oh, he stood me up for this morning date. Okay, well, that's why I got my tie on. Okay, moving right along, I did want to give a kudo to Jim Tutulis. I watched your presentation and what you had to say about the deal with Hertz, and I thought you were exactly right on the mark, trying to work with our largest employer here, getting everyone to understand that facing 75, if we put some yellow on that building, that's not a big deal as that's their brand. But yet the back of the building is going to continue to be gray. So everybody that was up in arms, and I think it taught Hertz a lesson. I got to tell you, working for a large $57 billion company, we would have never done a press release like they did. You never do that. Why they came out with it and sent pictures of the building to the newspaper to get everybody upset was totally ridiculous. That I might have to apply for that public relations job. I think I could do a little bit better job than they did. Okay, you folks know it's exciting times here at Ridgemont High. We're going to close on that property, the 62 acres, on Monday. Steve Sarkozy was out yesterday signing off bank loans with Capital Bank, so that's good news. We've already had 3 investors, believe it or not. One, the third one came in to me last night about 4 o'clock of folks that want to build something on that property. Only problem with the one that called me from Miami wants to put another memory care up. I don't know that we're ready for that. Even with this group in here, I don't think we're ready for another memory care. As you know, this is bad news for Alex maybe, but I do want to mention this, the Fawcett Memorial Hospital that bought the land here on Wednesday for the $52.5 million. We'll see how that plays out. That property's been for sale a long, long time, and I'm not too sure how they're going to develop that whole piece, so that's going to be news coming. The next big project starts on Monday, and it's a 3-day program. Hopefully you folks have signed up for this, and this is to do our community outreach on parks and recreation and open space. How many folks are planning on going to one of those? Try and take a look at that and see if you can't fit into that. Every one of these projects that we've done here in Estero, I think our manager, we have an outstanding manager, Steve Sarkozy. I will say that for him. I mean, he comes up with the best ideas. the best way of communicating with folks, and he always hires the right consultants that really specialize in a specific task. In this case, we're talking about parks and recreation. Eddie's not here. I don't see Eddie here today. Where's he hiding at? He must be sleeping in. He usually contacts me at least once a week in season about soccer fields, baseball fields, football fields, on and on. Steve Sarkozy has two wonderful plans of what this thing possibly could look like. Plus, the other plan he just showed me on Thursday, I don't know if you folks know, but the council has a 3-hour head-to-head with Steve every month. So we go in and we go over, what we see are some of the issues, and then we hear what he has planned on the drawing boards. And usually he really knocks us out with some great ideas. But the newest plan he showed me Thursday was the plan to build a junior high school and an elementary school here in Estero. It's a great plan. I'm sure he's going to show you that plan, but you got to go to the workshop. You got to go take a look at this whole thing. Some of you folks that know that I'm the liaison for the village for the Florida League of Cities. In fact, I'm the vice president of this chapter. And I do want to throw something out here. You probably read about it in the paper here this last week. Its ugly head comes up at least once a year, and that's the short-term rental situation. We are having a problem around Estero, even our own District 1, even in our own neighborhood, Vicki, with folks that are trying to rent their place for 3 days or a week, and it really causes havoc on everything, including the way the appearance of our properties, trash removal, on and on. We want to try and come up with something like they have in Fort Myers Beach and Cape Coral, with maybe an ordinance on that. I'd like to get some feedback from you folks. You guys have my email, ladies and gentlemen, have my email address. If you give me some feedback, this is what you're seeing in your community. Yes, you need some help with this, or you don't think it's an issue, or whatever the case may be. But Collier County's taking this on as a county, with the county commissioners down there. And I talked to Bert Saunders, who's our attorney, and he's also a commissioner. So he's going to give us some more feedback at the next couple council meetings on this. But the rental problem is getting out of hand. Most of you folks have documents in your homeowner associations where you can only rent for 30 days, and that's how we have it in the colony. In fact, Pelican Landing has that same document, and I understand you folks have it in Marano where you live, Vicki. We have it in Sorrento as well, but we have folks that are violating that. So I just wanted to mention that to you. We could use your feedback. I know you folks like to send me fan mail. That's one I'd like to get. Okay. The next thing I just shared with Don this morning, and Jim, they're the first two to know this. I was just appointed to the Continuous Systematic Improvement Advisory Committee with the Lee County School District. There's 15 of us on there. Now, we're not part of that tax over. People saying, oh, you're to be overseeing the taxes. It's nothing to do with the taxes. It has to do with strategic planning and set the course for the next 20 years on what we should be doing as a school district. And I was telling these two gentlemen this morning, right now it's about a 10 key point plan. The largest one is the language barrier of students coming in. They're having a big problem. Mark, you might be seeing that, and Jim, as you guys get out with your mentors and ambassadors, you might be running into the language barrier itself. That's one of the key things we're going to try and set up a plan for. And then the second one is, compared to other school districts, we don't have enough young children going in a preschool program before kindergarten, and they want to try and get that thing going. My first meeting with that group is on Monday. Jim asked me what kind of people they selected. I'm probably the only person on the committee that doesn't have a PhD, but they took me because of my years of experience with doing partnerships between UPS and school districts, where I was involved in 3. So my application, I was telling them, a lot of these guys come up and ladies come up with these great ideas, but they don't know how to execute the plan. And that's where I think I fit into the team. I think I could add value to that. The last thing I want to talk about is this Don Eslick Bridge catastrophe that we had here. And for whatever reason, we got to move on. We got to get past this thing. This was my talk I gave at the closing comments at the council on Wednesday. So it's our responsibility as a village to make sure Don gets recognized. So what I'm going to ask you folks is, how about sending me some ideas of what you think would be a good naming opportunity for Mr. Eslick? And then we're going to have a public workshop at the Village Hall where we're going to vet all the different ideas and have a big discussion that, so we really do this right. And I really feel committed that we want to get this thing done probably in the next 6 or 7 weeks, because we need to work with the commissioners. We need to get this thing behind us, and we also need to take care of Don. So I was impressed with Jim Tutulis when I watched the video, and his Don Esslich thing came up, and he was the first person in the group that talked about civility and making the presentations positive. And I think Bob Lenish did an outstanding job. I was impressed with each and every one of your talks. Nobody was dogmatic. Nobody was attacking. I guess we all really were pleading, if you really want to capture what we had to say. But they went on deaf ears, but we have to move on, and that's just how life is. And last but not least, Don, I have to bring up the 8 core values. You know, you and I wrote this. And you know, at any company, you folks that have been around a while, you heard my pitch on core values. Every company has a policy book. Even the advisory committee has 10 core values of behaviors that they want to see you do when you're at the meeting. And I think sometimes we tend to get out of the limelight or out of the lane of civility, and we become attack dogs. And I think we need to take a look at that. And I just want to make one suggestion. If the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, throw it away. I'm just telling you as an observer. But when you folks decide to write a letter to somebody, you really need to have a gatekeeper. And that's how we operated in the colony for years in different boards with the Urban League, United Way, or any of the other boards I've served on. We always had a gatekeeper before we go public with a letter to somebody. Because what happens is when you send a letter out, and it's not sanctioned by the group, that's your opinion, but yet the people reading that label you folks with the same paintbrush. So I don't know how you guys want to do this, but you really need to have 3 or 4 people say, Vicki, you know that because you're in our gatekeeper thing in the colony. You know, they have Vicki, myself, we have a big attorney there, Bob Luce, and a bean counter, Ben Corbley, that really vets all our communications. So when we send it out, we're never embarrassed. But I'll just leave on that note. I think you folks will continue to add value. I think if you take a look at each and every one of these core values, you know, a clearinghouse for ideas, you folks have stepped up to the plate, and we're going to hear some of those things later today. So that's all I have, unless you folks have questions.
Thank you, Bill. And you're brief as well. Right? Short and sweet. The next section of announcements, I'd just like to introduce to everybody who hasn't met her, Sarah Newcomb, who's back here. And Sarah is the new executive director of the Estero Chamber of Commerce and the director of economic development for that institution. And why don't you tell everybody, Sarah, a little bit about yourself, and welcome to the community and to ECCL.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My background is economic development, so I'm excited to be the head of this group with the Chamber. And I have a business background working on my master's degree in business, so I'm excited to work with you guys and work with the government and partner together to help build Estero and refocus the Chamber on the business community. So thank you for having me.
Any questions for Sarah? Anybody? Sarah, thank you very, very much. Welcome. As most of you know, I think, I serve on the, what do you call it, the task force, the Economic Development Task Force that was established by the Chamber to really resurrect the Estero Chamber in terms of its activity, working with the village to have an economic development facility or organization that is strictly focused on Estero. That doesn't mean they're not going to cooperate with everybody else, they will. But we have heretofore not had anybody who really had an Estero focus. And going back to the time when Hertz came here, we found that there wasn't enough talent in the community for their human resource needs. And a lot of the people and with families went to Collier County because they thought those schools were better than what we have up here in Lee. Since that point in time, we've spent a lot of time and effort, and the village has as well, to try to deal with those kinds of issues. But Estero's long needed an independent, Estero-oriented economic development enterprise. And like I say, after Hertz came, we did some work with Colliers International to develop a vision for the future and a marketing plan for Estero. It was never implemented because we didn't have enough money to do it, but the plan was useful. And so now with Sarah on board, we can begin to implement some of that much needed. Linda, you have a membership report?
Yes, morning everyone. I'm delighted to announce that effective January 1, we have a new community member to the ECCL, and that is Estero Place. Angelo Cateller is here as the representative for that community. I don't know, is Chris McMillan here?
He's not.
Okay, so again, welcome to our newest community member, Estero Place. That's it. That's it.
Okay. I'm going to switch things around a little bit so that Alex can get out of here. Our next presentation, therefore, will be Alex Greenwood, the Executive Director of the Lee Health Coconut Point Facility, to talk a little bit about the opening and how the community has received the facility and supported it thus far. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate the time again on your agenda. First thing I want to do is really thank you guys, ECCL, and the subcommittees have been so supportive. Your communities that you represent have been so supportive. We're getting overwhelmingly positive feedback. We have a few opportunities that we've identified for improvement, and I'll share some of that with you as well. But really the first message is just thank you. I mean, the partnership we've had, I think the only way to explain the first 6 weeks and even November through the opening events is to call it a success. It's been great, and you guys are so engaged and so helpful. We appreciate that ongoing support. I'll tell you, we've been, since we've opened, obviously volumes continue to increase. We're getting really busy. The building itself, the plant, quote unquote, if you will, is probably at about 40% capacity. It can hold a lot of people. But from a staffing perspective and based on the projections that we made for the patients we expected, we're pretty much at capacity with staff right now. We've already added, we're already adding staff in almost every area, with staff starting next week and the following week. So we think so far we found the sweet spot of when to add staff as volumes continue to grow. But again, there's a couple opportunities I'll talk to you about. Through December, we had 5,700 total appointments. That includes diagnostics examinations. That includes the exams up in the physician clinic, and that also includes the emergency department. About 900 of those are from the emergency department. So 900 visits. Since then, so through December, we were at about 30 visits per day. Really successful start. Since then, we've been running between 45 and 50 visits per day in the emergency department. And that continues to increase as well. Of those, we're actually at 1,400 ED visits today. 900 at the end of December, now we're at 1,400. Of those 1,400, about, let me make sure I've got this right, 350 have been admitted. So our admission rate when we started was a little alarming, frankly. When we first started, our admission rate was about 40%. 40% of the patients come through the ED were being admitted either to Lee or Collier facilities. We've normalized that a little bit. What you would typically expect around the nation is about a 10% admission rate. We were expecting here, with the population here, we were expecting probably somewhere around 20%, and we've normalized a little bit. I think as of today, we're running about 22% since we opened. So that's a good story to tell as well. Of those admissions that we've had, 14 have gone to Collier County facilities. about 95% of the patients coming through our facility are going to Lee Health facilities. So of those 300 transfers, 47% are going to Health Park, and that's been our plan. Health Park is really our initial backup and priority. Gulf Coast is seeing 31%. Lee Memorial Hospital is seeing 15%. And when everyone is at capacity, which we are today, we're sending a few patients to Cape Coral. We've sent about 6% to Cape Coral. We're not seeing the pediatrics we were expecting, honestly. I think they're still choosing to go directly to Golisano, which is appropriate if they have the opportunity to do that. We've had only 3, so let me explain the way our decision tree works for admission. You guys know as well as I do, capacity is an issue year-round, but especially during season, it's an issue at the hospitals in Collier and in Lee. So when we get to a place where we cannot get a bed, so far we're successfully keeping our patients out of Estero a high priority for the acute care facilities. But when we cannot get a bed, if we hit that 2 to 3 hour mark, we trigger what we call an emergency department to emergency department transfer. That is better than patients boarding here, probably, for the sickest of the sick, but still not the optimum experience that we're looking for, right? So we've only so far had 3 emergency department to emergency department transfers. I would call that a success as well so far. I'll talk about the trend in the emergency department specifically. In week 1, we saw 170 patients. In week 3, we saw 240 patients. And in week 5, we saw 320 patients. So that continues to increase. I'll talk about the experience a little bit in the emergency department. Patients that are arriving in the emergency department so far since we opened have had an average length of stay in the emergency department of about 3.5 hours, which is significantly better than the national average. About 66% of patients that are discharging from the emergency department are in the emergency department between 1 and 2 hours, which, again, as compared nationally, is an excellent experience for a patient discharging out of an emergency department. Patients that are being admitted, 98% of them are moving out of the ED within 4.5 hours. Again, significantly exceeding national averages at this point. 98% of admitted patients are moving out of the ED. And I'll tell you that those patients that are coming to our emergency department and requiring admission into the hospital have a lower length of stay in our emergency department than what they're demonstrating at the acute care facility. So our patients are getting priority appropriately because we don't have the services that obviously that a hospital has. So they're identifying us as a priority and they're moving those patients. I'll talk a little bit about the Lee Physician Group Clinic. They've seen 1,900 patients, appointments so far. In family practice, about 1,000 of the 1,900. So about half of the business in the physician clinic is for family practice or internal medicine. We've had some real success stories. Part of our goal, as I've been in front of you and other groups many times, part of our goal is to really leverage the services there and have that feeling of one department as opposed to siloed departments. We have a lot of examples of patients coming into the physician office requiring diagnostics, requiring CT, requiring MRI, and going directly down to that diagnostics area and getting those exams, and the results getting back to the physician the same day. We also, almost unheard of at other facilities, we also have patients getting referrals right out of the emergency department to physical therapy or cardiac rehab, having those assessments that day and their first experience the next day. So, and we have, I want to make sure I'm not misrepresenting. We have a lot of opportunity in that area, honestly. When you have 20 new physicians up in the physician clinic and new physicians work in the emergency department, they all have a learning curve. So we have more opportunity, but those things are happening and will continue to increase. Diagnostics has been really busy. Surgery is our biggest area of opportunity, honestly. We did 30 cases through January. That's about what we expected. December. When we opened the sanctuary at Colonial and 75 in their first month, they did 30 cases. So that's kind of the blueprint that we've laid out for this facility. This week we had, I think, 19 cases scheduled just in this week as compared to what we were doing in December. So again, that continues to grow. We have a lot of surgeons in the area, in South Lee, even in the Collier, that are showing interest. Those conversations are occurring weekly, and we'll be bringing them on board as they appropriately get credentialed through the health system. In the surgery area, so far, most of the cases have been either general surgery, orthopedics. We have, I think, 6 cases of orthopedics today, or urology. We actually have a lot of interest in urology, and we're welcoming that business as well. So we'll talk about feedback for just a second. Again, overwhelmingly positive. I have a stack of emails from members of the community talking about the experience. No wait at either the emergency department in most cases, or for the diagnostics and the physician clinic, minimal wait. Some of the opportunities we've addressed, obviously we have some staff who were, I think we're getting better at it, but who were somewhat novice, so that streamlined flow when you enter, that, you know, our aspiration of that was a little clunky at first. I think we're getting better. Registration is getting better at that. We're still escorting from the front door to the services in most cases. Again, very positive feedback. And then another opportunity I think that we're addressing currently is around capacity. So as an example, our physical therapy business, they're doing an excellent job. We had scheduled 3 therapists and a supervisor, which means they can do about 24 experiences for the guests per day, about that, and we are far exceeding that already. We're doing probably 35 a day. The supervisor working in there is also taking patients. We have people floating in from the hospitals doing a great job, and we have 2 new therapists starting within the next 10 days, I believe, and we'll be ready to rock to continue that. There's a lot of interest in that business. And then finally, I wanted to talk about kind of next steps. You guys have seen the presentation, and we talked a lot about new programs that we wanted to add as we open and further vet what the community is looking for. Senior care choices I've talked about before. That's really shoulder-to-shoulder support in the home from either health coaches, social workers, or sometimes lay people that can help with other things. I mean, we hung a TV a couple weeks ago in one of the houses. So currently we have 3 people hired. I think we have an RN and 2 social workers. And we are going to pair that initiative with the Concierge Health Coach initiative through Healthy Life Center. So we'll have kind of a cadre of staff going out into the community and providing whatever services from a health and wellness perspective, an independent living perspective, aging in place perspective. We'll be growing that in the coming months. Probably the next 3 to 6 months, we'll have a bow around that, I hope. And then also the Health Council or Health Committee that is chartered through this group, they meet next Friday. We have some really positive emails and feedback, and we also have a couple of emails, a few emails around the ED and capacity that I talked about that we'll be sharing with them. We're really going to kind of transition that group, at least from my perspective, into an advisory group for us, and we're looking forward to that discussion next week. Any questions for me? Yes, sir.
Alex, can you and or Bill share any information about the potential traffic light at Pelican Colony Boulevard?
You'll be reading about it in the newspaper, but we had a big powwow yesterday. We've been working on this thing forever, so I can't preach the confidence of the call, but you'll be reading about it because we're putting a press release together now.
Thank you.
We'll be very positive. It's so new, Alex doesn't even know.
That's right. That's right. We're part of that team, so I'm looking forward to it. Yes, sir.
Just a question on your competition across the street.
Who's that? No.
When they opened, did you see a drop in your ER?
We have not. Not at all. We've actually picked up since the holiday. I'm sure there's an impact, but we're not feeling it at this point. Yes, sir.
What kind of an impact are you having on Bonita Urgent Care?
That's a great question. I talked to Sarah McCollum, as the CEO over there, and she felt a little bit of a dip before the holidays, but since the holidays, they're busy, and she's not seeing change at this point.
Does Lee Health have any interest in that facility, in that organization?
So we are 50% partners in that with NCH. We do have an interest to own that entire facility and operation. I can't speak for NCH. I don't know how that's going to play out in the future, but currently we have some really strong synergies between us and the staff over there and the departments over there, and we actually vacated 3 suites there, and we plan to keep those leases and sublease that space to independent physicians and other services that we need to bring to the community.
Final question. How does one triage their movement for some health care? How do we make a determination, is urgent care best for us as opposed to the ER?
That is a great question. So urgent care is typically, obviously, the lower acuity patients, less complex things. But we have a document that I can send to Don and we can send out to you guys, a document and some education that we put together for the community. We've had that already in some of the communities and organizations, but we'll get that to this group.
That's good.
This
Thank
week.
you.
Yes, sir.
Not a question, but just a comment. It talks about all the admittance and people coming into the emergency room. We've seen a huge improvement in our emergency response and the response of the ambulances since this facility opened up. Typically in season, we wait 15 to 18 minutes for a hot ambulance to get back down from D5 or D7. They're getting them, I've been there several times, they're walking in, they're unloading the patients in 3 minutes, and they're becoming available for the community again. And we expected that, but it's really working seamlessly.
Yeah, the partnership with Scott and his team has been outstanding as well. And they're obviously a professional crew, so we appreciate that. Yes, Irv. Irv just left work. What are you doing here?
I think the best expression I've heard about the satisfaction of the people coming into the facility, it's like being on a luxury medical cruise ship. I'm serious about it.
Yep. We've heard similar comparisons. That wasn't the goal, but we'll take it, right? We appreciate it. I really appreciate your time. Have a good day.
As you know, ECCL has an agreement with Lee Health to promote activity at this facility 3 or 4 times per month. And I've been working with Alex and with Molly on those kind of messages. And in January, the main emphasis, because Molly really put a lot of emphasis on it, is this million-mile movement, which is starting the 15th, coming up in a day or two, for I think the next 3 months. And then on the 26th, the health fair at the Estero Community Park. And all of those kinds of things fit in with the healthy living aspect of the facility here. And I had a conversation the other day with a couple of the nutritionists over there and the programs that they're going to be instituting to try to educate people about how to prepare healthy meals, this type of thing. So you have a kitchen there, and in that facility and this type of thing, and 2 nutritionists who are available to the community to help address all of those different kinds of issues, which are so important, in my judgment, to leading a healthy life. So the more we can get people into the facility and aware of it when they're not sick, right? To complement what Alex was talking about, how do you serve them when they are, is very, very important. And with the probably our greatest success in this program to date was with the November 17th community open house, where it had over 5,000 people tour the facility in 4 hours. 5,000 people.
Yeah, we never could have imagined that turnout. We were really, really excited.
Anything you can do in your community to increase awareness of the facility, get people to go over there, take a look at it, and learn about all of the different offerings that they have, I think is very, very helpful. Because we still need final approval for the hospital, which will probably be sometime in May or June of this year. The fact that HCA is actually closed on this property up there indicates to me that they fully expect to get approval. And if they approve HCA, I don't know how in the world they can deny Lee Health. So we'll keep your fingers crossed. It isn't done until it's done. Thank you, Alex. Really appreciate it. Oh,
What are the hearings? Do you guys have them already? Were the hearings take place already?
The depositions are actually happening this week, and the hearings, Don knows better than I do, but last I heard they were 22nd, 23rd.
yeah, they start the 22nd, but they run for over 2 months. So it's a process. The hearing examiner has got the case, and he's beginning to take input on the 22nd.
Where's this other property?
Where's the other property? It's at the northeast corner of Williams and 41. And it's the large 100-acre parcel right there on that corner that goes over to and includes Via Coconut, okay? And goes all the way up to the shopping center just south on the corner of Corkscrew. Now, I've heard that they're not going to use all of that property for this hospital or for a medical office building, which are really kind of the two things that they're looking at according to what I'm hearing. But they have had experience with the town center type of development, the traditional neighborhood approach, which is what, that has an overlay on it. It is in the village center. And it needs to comply with all of those different kinds of requirements that we have in there and take advantage of the incentives. So chances are that if they get their way and are approved and move ahead on this thing, that they'll be using the southern end of the facility for these 2 buildings that they're hoping to build. And the rest of it probably will be housing in a traditional open community, not a gated community, along the lines of what we've been trying to get for the last many years.
20 years.
So with that, unless there are other questions, we'll flip back here to the input portion of the meeting. This is that period of time at each meeting where we ask you to tell us about issues that have arisen in your area so that we can help you to address them if possible. So does anybody have any comments or suggestions? Yes.
Angelo, Estero, please.
Yes, Ken.
We understand that an unnamed nonprofit group has asked for a rezoning request for the property at 21560 River Ranch Road, which is directly across from our River Ranch entrance, for some type of dormitory style group home, halfway house, to house up to 40 women and up to 2 children each. Not sure a lot about it, but didn't know if the councilman or someone else, maybe Jim, has heard anything about it.
Yeah, we know a lot about it. They're rather than put everything out there in front of the group, why don't you give me a call and I'll hook you up with the folks. We can have a powwow about it.
Okay.
All right. There's already something like it up the street, right around the corner on Corkscrew. Nobody even knows it's there. But what it's going to be a home for wayward girls that are expecting. Some of these girls actually are enrolled in the high school, and their parents are having problems with them. And I've dealt with a bunch of these types of situations in the 13 different communities I lived around the United States, and our foundation, the Annie Casey Foundation, funds the construction of these places. It'll be a positive thing, but I'd like you to hear it firsthand instead of from me.
Okay, so call your office directly?
Yeah, just call my number. I don't really have an office. Just call my number. And I kind of show up. As Bob King knows, I show up usually at the Colony Bay Club.
Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you.
Down here?
I'm Susan Paul-Schumer. I'm on the board of directors at the preserve at Corkscrew. We've recently run into a little bump in the road. We have a group of folks who want to live stream our board meetings. I want to know if any community in here live streams their board meetings. and I'll talk to you off this, outside of here about it, but is anybody here live streaming their board meetings?
Yes. Spring Run does.
I'm sorry?
Spring Run at the Brooks.
Okay.
West
Can I talk
Bay
to you
does
after?
too. West Bay does too.
West Bay does? Okay. And is it through your own Facebook? The way they want to do this is we have a community Facebook separate from Facebook. And you have to be a member of our community Facebook in order to receive the live stream. So I'm just curious, is that how you're doing it?
No.
Mo's
No,
mean.
you log on your computer. Everybody can log on their computer.
Can a non-member get to it?
Yeah, it's Spring Run members.
But I don't know, can non-Spring Run members get to it?
No.
So it's through your community.
Okay. Can I talk to you afterwards?
I think the question, Susan, is interactive, because our lawyer, Bellatera, said, I don't think there's any problem with recording the meeting.
Right.
But you're not gonna take questions and input from the audience, online or wherever, everything else. So I think that's the two pieces that you gotta think about.
I would just comment, I'm also from Spring Run, and as I understand it, our attorneys, and it may be semantics, we live stream, we do not record.
Right.
So you cannot access that after the fact.
They're not archived.
Okay, but what about, okay, so once the board meeting is over and you have adjourned your meeting, what happens to that? It is recorded, I mean, it's physically there. What happens to the live stream? Is it taken down right away?
Yes.
Yes.
Right away? Doesn't stay up there for 2 weeks or?
No.
No, it's gone. After the meeting's over with, it's gone.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We had a recommendation that we stream these meetings, from somebody that isn't able to get here and that type of thing. I don't know anything about streaming. Is that expensive or is it technically difficult?
No,
or
you're
would that be possible?
Sure.
Sure.
Would?
Simple.
Yeah. So it's something we ought to take up with the board. But that was just within the last couple of days where that request came in from somebody. Other comments or questions or issues as we move around the room here? Anything? Yes.
What was the second place besides Spring Run?
West Bay.
We just do audio, it's not a video.
That's not live streaming.
Well, it can be.
This is actually the video.
Spring Run?
Yes.
A lot of technical differences here. All right. Moving right along, the next item of business is one that we take care of at our January meeting each year, and that is the election of ECCL officers for the coming year, for 2019, this year. So with that, Linda?
Okay. Before we get into the actual election, I just wanted to spend a moment, this will be very quick, reviewing the process. And that is, first we do a nomination of officers. We will get into that in a moment. I did share this last month, but we will review it once again. We will also take nominations from the floor. We have we have an open position, or if anyone is interested in any of the director positions, we will take nominations from the floor. And then we will actually conduct the election. Before we conduct the election, just as a reminder, those eligible to vote in the election are the representatives from participating communities, active members in the ECCL. In the event the representative is not present at the meeting, the alternate representative can vote in their stead. So, okay, Mark? Last month I showed this little modification of this slide, but just as a reminder, there are 9 positions in the board. One is the chair position, and then there are 8 functional positions. We've been very fortunate in that a majority of our existing directors have submitted their name for a nomination, and that is Don Eslick as chair, Tom McDonald as communications director, Jim Tatulis as community development director, Jim Gilmartin as, excuse me, Education Outreach. We do have an open position shared last month. Unfortunately, Pete Cangelosi has elected to step down in pursuing other interests. So environmental position is actually open. Bob Lenish has volunteered to continue as our finance director and our treasurer. Will Gerson, who I don't believe is here today, has indicated he would continue as health director. Barry Friedman, who had an opportunity to come up and introduce himself to everyone at the meeting last month, has raised his hand to step in as the membership director. Some of you are aware Jan Pauley has been filling in as an interim director for some time, but she is stepping down from that position. And last but certainly not least, Bob King has indicated he'll continue, has a willingness to continue as our transportation director. So, I do ask, is there anyone here who is interested in nominating themselves or someone else for any of these positions? Okay, don't all rush at once. Bob Lenish, did I see you raise your hand? You're going to do 2 positions. What about it?
It's another Lenish. I was going to volunteer, but I don't know. He seems to be shaking his head.
I see him kicking you under the table, so we'll step away from that, Jack. Okay, then what I would suggest that we will do is vote on this slate of nominees. Again, recognizing our environmental director position is open. Certainly, if anyone changes their mind or has anyone you think might be interested in this position, I would ask that you reach out to me at any time, and I'll make the board of directors aware of that. So,
Linda, let me just, in the interest of public disclosure, I had an inquiry yesterday from a fellow who had been active with us for a number of years ago. And he was asking about the environmental director position. He was reluctant to step forward and has not confirmed that he would like that position because he's a seasonal person and is not confident that he could fully satisfy the requirements of the office. I suggested to him we might want to think about seeking to be an interim director while he's here this season, and then go from there and make a decision after that after that period of time. Everybody has a chance to see what kind of a job he's done, and he has a chance to assess just what's required. So we may hear back from him. I just wanted everybody to know that.
That's great news. Of course, that doesn't diminish the fact that if anyone else is interested in raising their hand, we certainly would be interested in speaking with you as well. So at this point, I'd like to conduct the vote. I'm going to ask by a show of hands, again, representatives or in their place alternates from active members in the ECCL. I'd like to have a vote for those who will accept this ballot of nominees. Looks good. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here who's opposing this ballot? Okay, well, congratulations to the new 2019 ECCL board. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I'm happy to have with us this morning Kelly Lewa from the American Heart Association to talk about the Heart Fair that they will be sponsoring here very, very shortly.
I think we have Tish. Is that correct? Tish
Yes.
Sargent?
Actually, Kelly is unavailable, so I'm stepping in for her today. Good morning, Tish Sargent from the American Heart Association. We're your neighbors here, and we're excited to be here right outside of the park here. There is an event on March the 2nd. It's a Saturday at the new Lee Health at Coconut Point, and we are partnering with them. So we're excited to have this event. Last year we had our Estero Heart Walk here at the park and the Recreation Center, but we've kind of moved that and partnered with Lee Health. So we hope that many of you will participate. It'll be a fun day. It's Saturday the 2nd. It starts at 8 o'clock. You can go online, and I have some flyers here that I will leave in the room, and please feel free to pick them up and share them with your communities. You can go online and register. There will be introductions to the facility that day. There will be Zumba, Tai Chi. We're going to have, you heard Alex talking about the kitchen, so they will have some cooking demonstrations going on with their nutritionists and their chefs, their cardiac rehab also. So there's a list of things that will be participant that day. And also you can walk. It'll be a mile route that they have. So chair massages, fun things, but you can also look at the facility, see what they do, and it's going to be a beautiful day. The weather's going to be nice. So I hope that you have interest in that. There are several communities here in Estero that have not participated before. So we're looking for a bigger participation this year. So please feel free to reach out to us. Again, I have flyers. I'm going to leave them here. And then also there's a business card of the Heart Walk director, Nicole Menendez. She's in her office. And please feel free to reach out with any questions. Go online to the website. You can sign up. There's you can donate. There's information there for you. Any questions?
I need a copy of the chart's emailed to me so I can put it in the
Yes.
charts. All right?
Yes. If you give me your card, I'll make sure that you get it electronically. Yes, Bob?
I just wanted to overemphasize that traditionally in the past, it's been a heart walk or a
Yes.
run, and we're still having that. In the run, it starts like at 8 o'clock. But that doesn't mean everybody else needs to show up at 8 o'clock. You want to go over see the facility, participate in all the other wonderful events that they have, most of which will be inside in the new layout facility.
Right.
So it's from 8 until, I can't recall, is it noonish? Noon?
So you're right, and I apologize for not saying that. Arrival is 8 o'clock for those that want to come for registration or just to kind of sign up for some of the activities that are going on for the day, the chair massages, the Tai Chi, the Zumba, the cooking classes, that sort of thing. And then the walk, I think, is around 9 o'clock or so. If you want to participate in that, you don't have to, but that is an option. So this is going to be called the Southwest Florida Health and Wellness Festival, where previously it was called the Heart Walk, but it's all combined. So it is another opportunity for you to get into the new facility. Thanks, Bob. Okay, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you some there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the next section over to Bob King, and we've got 3 different transportation-related issues that to be discussed. Bob, you might want to introduce Alan.
Yeah, I do. I want a brief discussion. Normally what we have done in the past is I've given the transportation report. This month there's been some things going on that required an expertise that I don't have, and I want to make sure that we present what's happening with the week's fish camp. That'll be followed by a discussion by Bill Savage regarding a meeting held this week with FDOT and LDOT relative to the improvements at the interchange I-75. And then finally, I'll talk for just a couple of moments on the bike ped master plan. The first part of the presentation will be relative to a survey and some work being done to gather public information on the week's fish camp. We were very, very fortunate to have met Alan Bowditch, who has been in the business of market research for a long time and owned his own company, has volunteered to step up and structure the questionnaire, which probably a lot of you have seen, and the focus groups that were held the last 2 nights. With that, Alan, I would like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bob, and a very good morning to you. And it's been a great pleasure to be involved in this particular project. It's a passion of mine and has been for a long, long time. So I certainly took this on board with a great deal of delight. Bob, do you have the thing for the slides here? Or?
I can have it from her, you can.
Thank you.
All right, and this one is forward, and Okay. Thank you. There is quite a fair bit to cover, so I'm going to be fairly swift with covering some of these particular slides. Let's go back to the objectives. The key issue here was obviously to try and examine from the cross-section of people here in Estero what they feel about the proposals that London Bay Homes were putting forward to offer access to the important area of Estero Bay. Obviously, in particular, we wanted to see what sort of minimal requirements people felt would be appropriate in terms of the number of boat ramps that there would be, the number of trailer and parking spaces there would be, off-site parking, and so forth. So, as Bob has mentioned, one of the first parts of the investigation was to carry out on SurveyMonkey a very important review of what people thought. I'm delighted to be able to tell you that as of this morning, we had 1,401 responses to that survey. That was over a 36% response. And in normal circumstances, when surveys like this have been done online with a broad community like we have, you know, one would normally expect maybe about an 18 to 20% response rate. So what that 36% level, and there are still several days to go, the survey hasn't been closed yet, tells us is there is clearly a great deal of interest and I guess a certain amount of importance that people attach to this issue. So in my summary here, just to cover the key points, 81% considered it at least very important that the public should have access to Estero Bay, and nearly 2/3 of those said they would be at least very likely to use the amenities that were being proposed there. Access was considered an essential amenity, and there is considerable concern about the perceived restrictions based on the proposed plans put forward by London Bay Homes. Several expressed concerns about the impact of continued development on the environment, and specifically on Estero Bay, and the impact likely from increased traffic density. And a key concern was that without prompting was the fact that boaters would be severely impacted by the restricted boat ramp access, where there was only going to be one boat ramp proposed in the current plan. Also, 75% would be likely to use many of the specific amenities on offer. Some of these were actually included in my discussion with Bob and the team. For example, the possibility of even having a ferry between the landing there and the Lovers Quay area, which would be allowing access for people in Estero to do that, if that was something that was popular. And as you'll see in a few minutes' time, that was certainly a very attractive proposition as regards the people who answered our questions. It was felt that there should be at least 2 boat ramps, and preferably 3 or 4, and at least double the trailer and car parking spaces. And in addition to that, in the discussions that I had with the boat owners who take their boats to places to launch them during these last couple of evenings at the discussion groups, equally the design that was proposed is clearly not conducive to the way that people would want to be able to launch their boats. And there are many aspects of that which I may not have time to go into today, but certainly the team here that will be perhaps taking some of these issues to the planning board will certainly have more detailed comments about that. Off-site parking was seen as somewhat unacceptable unless there was a regular shuttle provided. But even then, if someone is launching their boat and there is only one person launching it,
and they have to take their trailer away and moor their boat to take it back to an off-site place, which is more than a half a mile away, that's not going to work because people might be afraid the boat is going to suddenly disappear. So there are a lot of concerns about those issues too. So in short, while there is agreement that London Bay should allow Estero Bay access, unfortunately the overwhelming view is that what is currently proposed was unreasonable. In fact, this following comment, you may not be able to see it at the back, but I'll read it out to you, was very typical of many people who actually took the time and trouble to add their own comments to this survey. And this was very typical. I haven't chosen it for any special reason. The person said, I would like to see this development only if it enlarges the public access and the marina spaces to accommodate the boating and paddling communities. The focus of this site has always been the marina and public access and should remain that way. Anything else is secondary. I'd like to go on to just some of the key findings, and that was just a broad summary, but some of the key findings kind of obviously are more specific to those summary points that I've just made. So, as I said, 83% agree that the London Bay Homes operation should continue to allow boat ramp access and kayak access. And indeed, the issue of paddle boats came up also in the focus groups, with a number of people feeling that this is a very growing area. And indeed, the Estero Bay lends itself very, very well to this kind of amenity. Obviously, fishing in particular as well. And 81% felt that it was at least important, with 60% saying extremely important that the public should have access in this way. I've already mentioned that nearly 2/3 would be at least likely to use these amenities. So let's take a quick look at what they said would be of interest to them. So of those 2/3, what we see here is on the first line, if I can just press my button, here we go. So here we've got 87% said that they would certainly go down there and take a look at the sunsets. Some other high figures here was that over 70% would want to go there and picnic. This particular figure, which I mentioned earlier, of 78%, if a ferry boat service was provided, then 78% of those 2/3 would certainly want to use that. Obviously, people want to go and launch their boats. Because this particular sample was everyone, the percentage for people in the broad sense of those who would go and launch their boats was obviously slightly down, but it was still very high at 69%. But obviously, when you filter the data and only look at those people who own boats, which was significant anyway in our sample, then of course 88% would obviously want to go and launch their boats down there, if the circumstances were favorable. So when we took a look at whether the particular proposal which is on offer at the moment from London Bay was acceptable or unacceptable, we see that only really just over 1/3 of either the overall sample or even boat owners thought that what was really on offer at the moment was acceptable. The majority, of course, thinking that it wasn't. And the more that you got into the information from our focus group discussions with the boaters, then of course the more interest and greater detail came through about what was the shortcomings of what was on offer. And as I say, unfortunately today I don't really have as much time to go into that, other than to make an odd comment when we get to the end here. Some of the other key points, just to finish up, were those who considered the proposal unacceptable, which was the majority. Here again, their main concern was the majority, 82%, were concerned about the single boat ramp and that was unacceptable. Here we have a figure of 91% who were concerned about the trailers and the car parking spaces being simply unable to cope with the interest that there would be from this site. We also have a very substantial figure here of 74% who felt that off-site parking, particularly as it was suggested, isn't really very conducive to this. And finally, the issue of nighttime usage by the boating community probably wasn't as important. I know that about 60% of boaters would like perhaps nighttime coverage, but I think when we did discuss this with the boaters at the focus groups, while it might be of interest to some, I think most felt that as long as there was dawn to dusk availability, that in particular would be perfectly adequate. So just a couple of points, as I said, to finish up. The various issues that were unacceptable was that at least 2 boat ramps would be required, possibly 3 or 4. The availability of parking for both trailers and cars was inadequate. Really something of the order of double what was proposed was required, and off-site parking being criticized, and so forth. What I found most extraordinary, I've of course been doing this work in a variety of different ways for over 40 years. When you do a survey like this online, often people just don't want to spend that much time on it, and that's why the survey was actually designed to be done in around 5 or 6 minutes, and that's what time actually the average person took. However, there was a very last question that we asked: was there anything else that you would like to pass on to the ECCL for them to consider in their discussions with the planning people? And you can see the figure at the top here, that this was not something anybody had to fill in, but out of the 1,300, which was the number when I completed this, but as I said, we've got now over 1,401. So half of the people who filled in the survey went ahead and provided an additional comment at the end, which is almost, to me, unprecedented, which again underlines how important this is. And what basically they were saying was that they had serious concerns about the continued development on the environment on Estero Bay. Clearly many were concerned about the increased traffic density, and they were upset that the availability provided to boaters would be as limited and as impacted by the restricted boat ramp. So therein lies really the nub of the issue, and I know in my discussions with Bob, I think the feeling is that this has been a very valuable exercise, one which has provided, I think, a considerable amount of support, if there needed to be support proposed to both the London Bay Homes operation and, of course, to the planning office, about not only the impact that too much of a restriction on this area would have, despite the fact that I guess we all know that this is a commercial organization that's developing the property down there, but nevertheless we do have some very, very good guidance now on redesigning even what's offered. I know it would be great because some of the people said that if we could have not just 3 acres, which was the proposal that London Bay were offering, but somewhere near 7 to 8, and even if it could be slightly lower than that, that would be a big opportunity. I know that there was a suggestion from one of the people at the group that I ran last night, who was on the planning side, who felt that maybe an area which was a small holding lake, which is next to the area that they were developing, that might be moved to possibly provide greater acreage for the development of some of these features. So I hope you found that interesting. I'm happy to take any immediate questions that you may have, and then hand things back to Bob. But you can put the lights back up. Thank you. Yes?
How much longer will the survey be open?
It's finishing on the 14th.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know how many vehicles are parked there on the average day?
Not at this particular site. I mean, some of the people who were already visiting the Weeks Fish Camp, you know, obviously they had a very large area to park their vehicles. Some of the people, of course, currently use places like Lover's Key, in particular, is very popular. I mean, down there they have 4 boat ramps, each boat ramp being about 15 feet, and they have, you know, 100 trailers or more that go and use that. Clearly that may not be the option here, but nevertheless, the attractive opportunity, the only access to Estero Bay, would be an attraction for boaters. So at least double was certainly important. And of course, the other key problem was the preparation of the boats when people arrive. Unfortunately, the design as it currently stands would mean that everybody would be backed up down Coconut Road. And we all can imagine what problems that would create. So there was a lot of huge, you know, valuable information that we've gained. And, you know, even though I've tried to share with you the key salient points, there is a lot that we have at our disposal now which we can go through.
Alan, thank you very, very much.
My pleasure.
I'd like to ask Bill Savage, he's right here, to give us a little rundown on what occurred at the meeting that was held this week relative to I-75 improvements.
You could put the slide up there for the I-75 improvements. That'd be great. I just want to thank the people from Lee County. We had this past Monday we had people from Lee DOT, Florida DOT. We had Mayor Bosch, we had Councilman Wilson, we had David Willems from the Village of the Public Works, and we had David Murray from Lee DOT present. What's going to happen starting this summer? It's going to impact everybody in this room horribly, but it should after a year it really should help. What they're going to do, they're going to put an extra left turn lane in. So you can get on both north and southbound I-75, and what the second left turn lane is, as was described, it's going to give a lot of extra space. They call it storage space for the 2 lanes of traffic as it backs up at the light, and then theoretically, with the same amount of light time going through, you're going to get double the traffic that's going to move. If anybody has driven on Corkscrew Road in the afternoon, you know what a battle it is. You know, from sometimes 2 o'clock, and then there's a kind of a lapse, and then like 4 to 6, it's horrible. So what this is hopefully going to do is take the backup as it backs up in the passing lane. It's going to, that's when the cars back up, can't get in the left turn lane, and it's going to happen on both sides. So, I mean, and then they're also going to put in a second right turn lane, so there's going to be 2 right turn lanes, 2 left turn lanes, and 2 driving lanes. What's really needed on Corkscrew Road, especially with all the developments that have gone on and are proposed, is actually 3 lanes on Corkscrew Road. But that, we're all going to be dead before that happens. The number I saw was like 2029. So.
Can I just ask, the 2 turn lanes, north and south, are they in both directions, east and west on Corkscrew?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it backs up coming westbound as well as eastbound. But yes, so it's going to be double lane on both sides and a double right turn lane as well. So theoretically, the traffic you can take a lot of traffic off of Corkscrew Road, but certainly not enough. And it's, I mean, 2029 is a dream to make it 3 lanes, because when they make it 3 lanes, you gotta take the whole interchange out. They've gotta take the whole bridge out, and maybe that'll happen if they actually put a 4th lane on I-75. Maybe they would do it, but don't hold your breath. So, but high marks to the people from Lee Dot, FDOT, and the village for helping out on this. Anybody have any questions?
When does
Okay.
it start?
Starts this summer, like August, September. The bids go out in April, and then, you know, et cetera, and hopefully it's gonna be, you know, late summer when it starts.
Thanks.
Yes?
There's 2 left turn lanes, do they both merge on the ramp after you make the left turn?
Yes, but they're gonna continue, they're gonna move the double lanes up further. So there's not, you know, a merge right away. So it's gonna take a lot of the traffic as the traffic turns onto the turn lanes going on to I-75, the merger lanes, it's gonna be 2 lanes way up. And so that's gonna widen I-75 a little bit to give a merge on there. So that traffic's not gonna back up on back. Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Will that affect that interchange where you come out of your development there, Estero Bay and so on?
It's gonna back up right to our driveway. So it's gonna start right across the street from us. It's gonna back up right to there, to that intersection. That intersection's eventually gonna get closed once they put the light in. And that whole thing that's another story, but, that's gonna back up right to there, and also on the right lane accessing, southbound on I-75. It's gonna come right to our driveway.
So will that restrict left turns coming out of the Estero Bay area, your area?
It's not right now, but when they put the light in at Lowe's, there will not, that left turn lane will be gone. So, and U-turns. So,
Bill, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to take just a couple of minutes and talk about the bike ped master plan. This right now is a $100,000 program funded by the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and it is being administered by looking for the right word. There's a team put together that's both LDOT, the Village of Estero, a focus group, which I'm a member of, and will be providing input to this plan. And Jacobs Engineering is the primary person that is actually running it. The final report for the council was expected in May of 2019. The next slide. Right at the moment, there was a kickoff meeting held in November. This planning committee got together and formulated inputs that are now being considered. What they're doing is they're actually gathering information on where does Estero stand at the moment. They did a walking study, and they looked at both pedestrian and bicycling capabilities that exist today. That will form the foundation for what they put together for improvements going forward. Right at the moment, there is a gap analysis. The gap analysis is really the analysis of saying, what do we have versus what we think we need to have. There's a needs assessment that is currently being conducted, and that will provide the design criteria. There is going to be a lot of emphasis placed as they go forward on public input. The next slide, please. There's going to be public workshops scheduled for February and March. The project advisory committee has already met once and will meet 2 more times. But there'll be an opportunity. I think this is important that all of you who have an interest in bicycling and pedestrian walking, get involved. Provide what your views are and what you think needs to be done. If you look at Estero, we're designed around gated communities. They did an assessment of, and the next slide please, The last thing is, they did an assessment to look at the bike ped master plan existing conditions on a walking score. Village of Estero had a score of 13, which says that almost all errands require a car. You know, we're designed around the automobile. For that to change, things like Village Center needs to look at higher densities, needs to look at connectivity. As far as the gated communities are concerned, we're going to need to look at when things like Corkscrew Road are improved, that it has bicycle shared use paths. It provides for pedestrians, it provides for bicyclists, as well as for the automobile. We're not going to get rid of it. But right now, that's where that stands. Going forward, there'll be opportunities. I'll keep you posted on when we have an opportunity to meet and make an input. But we need your help. Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. One other comment going back to the Weeks Fish Camp proposal, London-based proposal. They have one building in there that's 20 stories high. This is part of a senior healthcare facility. And the density is about 10 units per acre. About 300 units on 27 acres, something like that. So the density is a real issue with that, and if you're going to have an expansion of the marina, you need to shrink the portion of it that is your senior healthcare facility. And so I made an arrangement with Lee Health to try to learn more about the necessary density and absorption of senior housing facilities, because we now have 5 or 6 of them in Estero and a couple of them immediately on our borders. Fortunately, they had some consultants coming into town next Tuesday. And so we're going up to Cypress Cove, which is Lee Health's facility, senior facility, right adjacent in the health park up there, and meeting with all of these people, all these experts, and having lunch with them after touring that facility and discussing these kinds of issues so that we can determine how best to deal with the needs for different kinds of senior health care living in the community, because we're seeing a lot of it happen. We don't want it to be overbuilt. We want the community to be able to absorb it, et cetera. And it needs to be of the right kind. You know, you've got independent living, assisted living, and memory care in many of these facilities. So several of us are going up there to meet with these experts and see what they had to say about both about the Weeks Fish Camp proposal and about the overall development of senior housing in the community. So anybody that's interested in joining us, let me know. I don't know how many additional people we can take. With that, I'd like to move on to the financial report, Bob, if you don't mind.
Well, I'm glad to. I always look forward to this part of the meeting. We had a very good month in terms of revenue. We got $825 net. Now, just to remind you, that does not include any dues yet. That is just the income we're beginning to receive now from the work that we're doing on digital marketing. And for those of you that have not met Tom McDonald, one of our directors, he has done just an outstanding job of helping us develop this program, which is still in the embryonic stage. But in any event, we got $825 this month, and this is a program we expect to grow to involve other parts of Estero as well, not just Lee Health, who is now our primary and only client in this area. Our expenses for the month were in about $1,000 generally every month. In true form, $900 this month. The survey software, this relates to what Alan talked about earlier, the survey that he did in which he was able to reach out to 4,000 people with this survey and get such a great response rate. cost the ECCL about $400 to acquire Survey Monkey license for the year. So this has worked out very well. And then we have a small amount of money we're paying this month for rent here in this facility for our meetings. So at the end of the day, we lost about $500 this month. We have, on the year, lost about $10,000. Now, in part, that is because of the fact we got about $8,000 of dues last year, 2017, related to 2018. But nonetheless, this is why we are looking at a number of alternatives of different ways that we can raise money and still maintain our primary mission of serving Estero and communicating to you all the important things that are going on and involving you in what goes on in our community. The dues invoices have now gone out. That is no small feat. And I want to tell you, I really want to thank Linda, who did just an outstanding job of helping us with all those. We had about roughly 60 email addresses, only 2 bounced out of 60. That is just incredible. Thank you. And we actually got our first dues check today.
I checked the box at 9 o'clock. There was nothing in there, Bob. Just let you know.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it. I did want to mention just briefly that we are establishing a finance and fundraising committee. I've mentioned this in the past. We've made, I think, a lot of progress this particular month in identifying our mission and what it is we hope to accomplish. But here again, this is a situation in which we can keep the books, we can report the numbers, but at the end of the day, how are we going to finance this organization as it grows and moves into the future? We've enlisted some help from some very, very smart, talented people within the organization. So we'll hear more about that in the future. So thank you all, and those of you that have an opportunity to check with your building people and your expenditure people, please make sure that we get our dues in the next month or so. Thank you.
On digital marketing, we're saying advertising?
Essentially what it is we're taking events that Lee Health is providing to the community, like the health fair this weekend, and we're boosting that out through our network, not only just to our 4,000 people, but also to all 11 or 12,000 people who have Facebook accounts in Estero or Bonita Springs. And so we receive about $1,500 a month from Lee for doing this, and Don mentioned the 3 or 4 things that they have planned for this month. So that's how and then we pay a certain amount of that to the firm that helps us do all that.
I think when we're doing activities like that, that's great. I think if you decide to go into advertising, then you need to say that it's an advertisement. If you're looking for fundraising down the road.
I see your, yes, right. Well taken.
In the website,
right.
Like you do in a newspaper.
Right. Do you have an advertising background? Oh,
no.
Shoot. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next on the agenda is Mark Nowitzki and the Strategic Planning Task Force, which he chairs.
My co-lead is Larry Jones over there. Stand up, Larry. So if I'm ever not here, you can't get a hold of me. Larry's the guy. So yeah, strategic planning. Where are we going? It's been 5 years since the village has been put together. So some of the things we need some help with is defining our membership. Years ago it was just the 35 communities. Now we've got Lee Health. Do we bring in some apartment buildings? They're also legal residents. We're not going out to every gas station. Barry said he doesn't have time for that. But we've got to decide that, and that's something the executive board will be doing because we want people involved in the community. Okay, we need to have a strategic planning session. If you look at our our mission, it talks about just dealing with Lee County and the state, where we actually now are dealing with Lee County, the state, the village, and the city of Bonita. We got to expand that a little bit. So we've got Jim Gilmartin and Bob King are going to work on that vision statement. But we need to understand what the membership is, and we actually need to have a branding and a strategic planning session. So more to come. Okay? So right now I've got 6 or 7 task force members, and most of those task members are assigned to work on a committee. I need some more, okay? But each one of those is going to go in and find out, kind of discover what those committees do. I can honestly tell you I don't know what every committee does. I've got some idea, and we've done some pretty good documenting, but let's make sure everybody understands. So we're working on that. Engaging with partners. Me or one of my team members, we've met with Nick Bedos, we've met with Steve Sarkozy, we've met with Sarah Newcomb, we met with Nolan Rollins, and we're meeting with others so we kind of understand what we're doing and what everybody else is doing. We don't want to overlap. We want to make sure the village knows we're kind of there to support them. We're not there to take their job. And that has changed over 5 years, how the village views us and how we view them. I myself sent a note to Don about 3 years ago, said, why do we need an ECCL now that we got the village? Well, the village has 10 paid employees. Okay? Understand roles and responsibilities, understand overlaps. We do interface with a lot of people, and there is some overlap, but not tons. I'll do this a nicer chart one day with all the official logos, but 3 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep, this is what comes out. But you notice how big the overlap here is with the village. And the first chart you saw today was that volunteer. We're all volunteers. Okay, none of us are getting paid. So the idea that, we could have 500 opportunities that we could do as the ECCL. But again, you can't tell people, hey, Transportation Committee, I need you to work that. We have to decide kind of what's going on. So we're getting tons of input from our partners, but we've really got to understand, what's important. And you notice over here, the chamber is really business development. That's not what we're all about. So we do have, a little overlap. Other government agencies, sure, but the village is the biggest, and we got some not-for-profits out there too. Okay, understanding committees, we're reviewing what the committees do at their level. You can't kind of say you need to change if you don't know what they're doing. So Jeremy Jasper's going to work with Jim and his team on education. I haven't taken a committee because I'm still hoping for 2 more volunteers. And basically everything we do really ought to be kind of assigned to a committee. Really good example, and I know I'm at the end of my time, the generator that Nick Bedos, the guy, he brought Briggs and Stratton and the other guy in. I actually bought that generator. I got it in my house. It's running great. But that's not really something that we as the ECCL do. It didn't kind of fall under any of our committees. One of the things Barry's probably working on is membership. A lot of these opportunities that the village and others have presented to us need volunteers. But you go out and look at the 35,000 residents of Estero, we've got somebody, some expert that can probably help with that. Okay. So we're looking, prioritize opportunity. Like I said, I got 3 pages of opportunities, but we don't have enough people, time, or resources to do that, so we're going to have to prioritize. Create an annual report to the community. The Boy Scouts have done this for 2 years. It's a great opportunity. Don does something like that when he sends out the membership letter, so we can put that together. Be proud of what we do. Education Outreach Committee's probably got 10,000 hours of time just in the fall semester in the schools. Okay, we know Bob King's spending tons of times at all kinds of meetings. We know Pete would hang out for days at hearing examiners. Okay, and I'm not trying to brag on anybody individually, but I would like the community to know that we're probably putting 10,000 hours a year in as this committee, all unpaid. The Boy Scouts say the volunteer hour is $25, roughly $25 an hour. Let's blow our horn a little bit. Accomplishment, how do we measure what we're doing? And then processes and procedures. If you notice, the agenda didn't quite follow the charts. Some of that's my fault. I'll take most of the blame, credit, or acknowledgement for that. But that's one of the processes. Pete kind of said, hey, it's yours. So at the end of the last meeting, I didn't know where they were supposed to go to, so I sent them. I didn't have the right logos and all kinds of other things. So I put together a process. Here's how that works. So if I get run over by a truck tomorrow, somebody can step right in. So there's a lot of things that we're helping look at processes and procedures also. So, all right, Jim. Wrong Jim, but
thank you, Mike.
my name is Jim Shields.
And you're not.
And I'm much better looking than the other one. Whoa. Okay, let's hit it. What I'd like to do is excuse me, very briefly. I have a little bronchitis, so we'll get through it quickly. But just to remind you what we're all about in the Education Outreach Council, we're basically designed, our basic purpose is to help educational organizations within Estero reach out and get some folks to help them out, and volunteers, talented professionals, individuals, business people, etc., to act as educational ambassadors. The term educational ambassadors actually was surfaced by Bill Ribble and Nick Betos in a variety of conversations, and we think it's great and it's selling well among the folks who are now involved in some of the programs we'll talk about. This is basically what we're going to focus on, what we're focusing on now and probably into next year. We're going to focus on JA, which you've heard Jim Shields talk about quite a bit. He's the Commander-in-Chief of Junior Achievement for ECCL, and although he's on the Education Outreach Committee, that's his basic focus is on that, and he's been very, very successful. We'll talk a little bit about it down the road. Lee County School Support has really evolved with this memo of understanding that was signed between the council, village council, and the school board, suggesting that they two work together to try to come up with a variety of different resources and support systems for Lee County School, which we are doing. We're working with them on a number of issues there. We'll briefly talk about it. FGCU is tied to the the Institute of Entrepreneurship. That's something Sandra Kawanui has been running and quite successfully for a number of years now. Our job was to help them think some of that through, contribute to a couple of things that we're doing, and then surface mentors for those returning veterans and students who are interested in setting up a business. And they look for people, seasoned people like yourself in this room, who can help them think through what they're doing. Not necessarily tell them what to do, but think through it, offer them other thoughts for consideration as they're moving towards setting up the business. The basic focus, though, on this is we're trying to tap into the human need to give back, to want a legacy, to want to share what they've known and learned over the many, many years with other people in the community. That's what we really press when we try to get volunteers to come and help in any of these various areas, and it's working back. It's working well, I should say. So let's talk about a 258 Graduate. This is the major program that we've been pushing over the last year or so, where we partnered with the various schools. We supported and recognized ambassadors. We actually had an event that was hosted by Grandeza. We brought these teachers in. We brought in a whole lot of folks, and it was very, very successful. Just telling these people, we really appreciate what you're doing. Giving them a glass of wine, a little sandwich now and then helps everybody. We were also conducting ongoing recruitment and training. Right now, JA has been moving along where they've touched about 700 students' lives since we started this thing, and it's going to get more and more. We're in the early stages now. We'll be going into the next session within the next couple of months, and the numbers are going to be dramatic as to how many people we're actually touching to give them an idea of what civic involvement is, what it's like to understand what finances and community is all about, and so on. Really very important, we think, and we started at the second grade, 7-year-olds. People don't believe that they get it. They get it. They absolutely get it. It's amazing what you'll learn if you do get involved in that. So training is important. Financial support is the Breaking PAR program that Jim Shields actually developed over the last 7 years. This will be the 7th year we're doing this. We're really going, we have a very far-reaching objective, and that is to almost double the amount of net proceeds that we brought in from last year, which means we're looking for $100,000 net that will be given to Junior Achievement, FGCU's Senior CEO Academy, which is a part of Junior Achievement, and so on. All the money that comes from this goes directly to them. We have no expenses.
We look for volunteers, people will come up, somebody put together that whole flyer there. No charge to us. So we really have a lot of people that are spending time and energy to make this happen. It's going to be a successful event. It's coming up in March. If you haven't had any information about it, please go to the ECCL website. It's all there. It's really very inexpensive, like $62.50 a person if you get a table of 8. That's nothing. You're going to get a great dinner. Going to get wine and beer, maybe a little champagne. It's really an amazing deal for you, but all that money is going to go to those kids. So please think about it. Try to get yourself and a couple of friends. Doesn't take much. 3 more friends. And order a table and show up there. Show your support for an ECCL program that is, and by the way, it is now ECCL. Jim has handed it over to ECCL, and we're the ones that are going to make this all happen. So it's important, and I strongly suggest you go in and take a look at that breaking par at Grandays Peace. Lee County Schools, we've done some great things for them, and one of them, in addition to surfacing up a volunteer program to help them out, which is still being worked on, we asked Grandaza if they would support something for the Three Oaks School. And what they did, that says Pinewoods, but it's actually Three Oaks. I think it's Three Oaks, right? Isn't it Three Oaks that they did the cleaning of all the cement?
No, that was the elementary school.
It was the elementary, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It is fine. Okay. The point here I'd like to make is that they did this pro bono, and 90 man hours of people were over there cleaning all the cement around that school. That principal and teachers were just really taken back by that kind of thing, and that's more of what we can do down the road. And then we developed a process, as I said, with the Village of Estero to recruit more people, and that's moving ahead. The entrepreneurship program, we contributed to a number of different things that was going on there. The development of a letter to potential mentors, contributing to an IFE guide for those mentors, giving them an outline. Here's what you're responsible for. Here's the ethics behind the programs. Here's the value behind it all and what's expected of you. And then finally, contribution to the development of an EOC-based mentor list. That's basically it for my report. We continue to move ahead on this. If you have any notion at all about volunteering beyond what you come to in this setting here, and then please come and talk to us. Talk to Shields, talk to myself, Kenny James you may have met. We'll be happy to walk you through that process. And please go back into your communities and share this kind of information to your communities through the communication vehicles that you have. Any questions?
Thank you, Jim.
Not bad, thank you.
Moving right along, call on the next Jim, Tutulis, to give us the community development report. Jim?
First of all, I want to ask you, has anybody noticed the casino in Estero? No, not really? Well, the largest bet that I know of in a long time has just been made here. Hospital Corporation of America bet $52.5 million on a piece of property to place a hospital that has not been approved for them to build, on a piece of property that is not zoned for their use. Pretty big gap. So, probably they know something more than I know, and Don alluded to the fact that they're counting that it's going to happen. But from a planning point of view, look what's happening in Estero. That 100 acres was going to be the town center. A portion of it may still be the town center, but we also just bought 62 acres to the north of there, which is really close to where there's going to be a town center. So there's going to be a lot of different development from what was originally contemplated. And we're going to see the city or the village hire some planning experts, a process to figure out what to do with that parcel of property. But we are encouraging them to include the planning to incorporate the entire village, which is these new 100 acres of whatever's going to happen there. And also just remember what the other hospital did. They bought 40 acres across the street from the shopping center. So just imagine 62 acres, blank property, 100 acres, blank property, 40 acres, blank property, all in Estero. You think the planning committee is going to have something to do in the future? I believe so. And that leads us to, just to put this all together. ECCL has got an encouraging process of whatever's taking place in the planning and zoning community to come in and voice our opinion. And Don has a speakers panel so that people are studying what's going to happen. They put together what we feel is the right thing to do for the village, and we come out and we voice our opinion. So I think that this is a great opportunity for what's coming up here with almost a couple hundred acres of development in the future to figure out how we can help the people that are owning these properties to develop them for the best use of the village. So that's where we're going. A lot of work coming up.
I'll wrap up the environmental and health reports just very briefly. In the case of environmental, the local planning agency of Lee County had a hearing about 2 weeks ago to consider a proposition that had just emerged, frankly, a day or two before, where the county is going to eliminate the future lime rock mining overlay, which is a district in the DRGR that defined where mining could occur. And as you know, because we've had numerous presentations, there are 2 mine applications that are pending outside of that area. We wanted to expand mining to very, very large parcels of property that were not in the overlay. And the overlay was developed based upon the needs of all of the communities between Sarasota and Collier for lime rock, which is the basic material that makes up concrete block. You know, it's a construction material that's used as a base for roads. It's used for cement, used for block, that type of thing. Very, very important. And we have supplied from these mines out there by Lico Road, 70% of all of the lime rock needs of all these 7 counties for the last 30 years. And the study was done to try to determine, will this area provide enough rock for the next 30 years? And indeed, it was concluded that it would. So now that's not enough, you know, from the industry's perspective, and they want to expand this area. Well, it turns out that the county just kind of threw up their hands and said, we're just going to eliminate that boundary entirely. And that proposal was first heard by the LPA a couple of weeks ago. And there was nobody there that supported it, and many of us there to oppose it. But it's a long way from dead at this point in time. I think the staff went back to look at it a little bit more carefully, and that's going on at the present time. But we'll, even though we don't have an environmental director at this point in time, we'll keep track of all of this kind of stuff, keep everybody informed, and do the best we can without Pete's help. The other thing is Lowell Gerson is traveling today, but the Lee Health, or the Health Committee, which he chairs, will be meeting next Friday in the classroom at Lee Health Coconut Point. And any of you who are interested in that facility and seeing the classroom, which is available for use by different groups, different civic groups, please come to that healthcare meeting And Lowell has picked up on the work that Mark has been doing. And this meeting is basically a strategic planning committee meeting for the health committee. So if you haven't been invited, Mark, you definitely ought to be there.
We'll be there in the morning, strategic planning.
But each, you have a meeting there earlier that day, so. Anyhow, that's my report, and I want to thank all of you for coming and staying. We managed to get done in 2 hours, we always shoot for an hour and a half, but never quite make it. But it was a very full agenda, and I think very interesting. Glad to see so many of you stay.